some Trump world figures are now describing Ghislaine Maxwell. And let me just state this now for the record to be very clear. Convicted child sex abuser Ghislaine Maxwell is not the victim here. The real victims, the survivors, are people like Jane. Now, we don't know Jane's full name, but we know that Jane was 14 years old when she met Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell at a youth camp in Michigan. Here's what the story said, quote, Epstein first abused Jane when she was 14. Jane said that there were sexual encounters with Epstein for the next 3 years, around every 2 weeks. Sometimes, Maxwell was in the room during the sexual abuse. There were occasions when Maxwell touched Jane's breasts. Jane is a real survivor. So is Carolyn, who testified that she went to Epstein's home over 100 times from age 14 to 18, where she was told to massage Jeffrey Epstein. Carolyn said that at the age of 14, before one of the massages, Maxwell came in and felt my boobs and my hips and my buttocks and said that I had a great body for Mr. Epstein and his friends. And then there's Maria Farmer. Unlike some of Epstein's other victims, Maria Farmer was 25 years old when she says Epstein assaulted her, though her younger sister, who also says she was abused by Epstein, was a minor. Maria Farmer was an employee of Jeffrey Epstein's at the time. She says that in 1996, she was at the estate of Victoria's Secret CEO Leslie Wexner with Epstein and Maxwell. She says that Epstein and Maxwell violently groped her until she fled the room and barricaded herself in another part of the building. And during her time in Epstein's orbit, Maria Farmer says she also encountered Donald Trump. She told the New York Times that in 1995, quote, late one night, Mr. Epstein unexpectedly called her to his offices in a luxury building in Manhattan. She arrived in running shorts. Mr. Trump then arrived wearing a business suit and started to hover over her. Ms. Farmer said she recalled feeling scared as Mr. Trump stared at her bare legs. Then Mr. Epstein entered the room and she recalled him saying to Mr. Trump, no, she's not here for you. The two men left the room and Ms. Farmer said she could hear Mr. Trump commenting that he thought Ms. Farmer was 16 years old. Joining me now is Maria Farmer, along with her attorney, Jennifer Freeman. And before we get started, I just want to say to you, Maria, I think it is incredibly courageous that you are continuing to tell your story in a very, very public way. It cannot be easy, and I'm very grateful for you being here with us tonight. So let me start just there, Maria.
Thank you, Jen, for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Let me start by asking you, this nightmare has followed you for a very, very long time, decades. And I'm sure that Jeffrey Epstein's reemergence, all over the news has been incredibly painful. How are you? How are you doing? How are you digesting all of this?
Thank you for asking that. That's very thoughtful, because a lot of people aren't aware of every time his picture is on one of their podcasts or, and I've asked several people, can you please not just flash his picture everywhere or Maxwell's and not glamorize them? But thank you for asking that, because a lot of people aren't aware that re-traumatizes victims every time we have to see his face. And it's a case that has just never gone away. It just won't go away. And I need your audience to understand that, I reported this almost 3 decades ago. So a lot of people will say, oh, why is she just coming forward now? And they think it's political, and it's not. It's something I've been working on. Pretty much I dedicated all of my youth to this. And so I'm doing it not just for me, but for the victims who are now deceased and the victims that are very much alive. And I want to get justice for all of them. I feel that for my little sister to have gone through what she went through and to have had to testify against Maxwell and then have to suffer, and there are others that I love very much who are suffering this right now about Maxwell. It's completely unacceptable. Why would Maxwell be given a voice when she is a convicted pedophile? It's been very difficult, and I appreciate the question. I appreciate you asking.
Of course, and I think we're all grateful for you having the courage to be here and tell your story and be out there. And let me ask you, because this is one of the reasons I think it's so important to hear from people like you who are so courageous. You and your sister, as you just referenced, Annie, were the first survivors to come forward and try to tell the authorities about what Epstein and his associates were doing. You first went to the NYPD in 1996, then the FBI. You said you felt like you weren't taken seriously.
Right.
You've repeated that. You were now suing the federal government, accusing it of negligence and failing to protect victims of sexual assault. And I just wanted our viewers to be aware of all of that and all the time you've spent on this and trying to get this story told. Tell us more about the story you told to the police.
When I called, I told them I was reporting kind of an international pedophile, and I called it child pornography ring because they didn't call it CSAM yet. But that part is one of the most important parts to me, because some photographs that were personal photographs of mine that I used for working from, not to copy exactly, but they were anatomy studies for my art. And I was doing these series of paintings for the movie As Good as It Gets. This wasn't for me, it wasn't for Epstein, it was actually for a major producer. And because of being, held captive, I didn't get to finish that. But basically, those photographs are a permanent thing that Ghislaine Maxwell stole from the basement at Leslie Wexner's guest house. And those photographs are a permanent way that my sisters are being abused and that I'm being abused. And so when I told the federal government, I said, this really frightens me, because I believe if they did this to us, they're doing it to everyone. And I see a lot of children coming in, allegedly for Victoria's Secret modeling, or for modeling for Katie Ford. They had all these model scouts around them, Trump, all these people, and they were allegedly auditioning models. But for Victoria's Secret, the girls didn't have any breasts. I didn't understand. And so basically, it's been very an arduous journey over 29 years of just trying to get people to hear me. So I'm so grateful that you're bringing attention to this evening.
Nope. And we want you to be able to tell all the aspects of your story that it's so important for people to understand. And it wasn't you didn't only go to the FBI and the police back in the 90s. You also had an interview with agents in 2006. And one of our legal correspondents, Lisa Rubin, was able to obtain the FBI's notes from that interview. I'm just showing some of them right there on the screen. There are a ton of redactions in these notes, as you can see. And I know this was some time ago, but do you remember what you spoke to them about during this interview, and what details you shared with them during this interview?
Yeah, so basically I want to make it really clear, because people don't understand this. My little sister was only 16, and she didn't go to the FBI in '96. I did that. And I protected my family because I didn't want anyone to know how dangerous this was. And so basically, after 1996, they literally just hung up, and I heard nothing for 10 years. And then I got a knock on the door. I was in the woods of North Carolina, and there were these two agents standing there. And Agent Nesbitt Kirkendall said, we're here about your 1996 FBI report. And I was kind of shocked, and it's because I have so much trauma. I was kind of making jokes and trying to give them orange juice and cookies and, just make light of it. And it's so traumatic. Like, my sister was selling products to them. We didn't know what to do with the FBI. We told them the entire story of what occurred with Ghislaine Maxwell being a sexual predator and predating children. She used to say, I need to go get the nubiles at 3 o'clock because the children were getting out of school. And of course, I would ask to quit. And I said, what is this? And she said, no. They're just models for Victoria's Secret, Maria. Just calm down, So basically, there was a lot of gaslighting that occurred. But in 2006, they hunted me down. And they asked me to testify in the federal trial in Florida. And then they gave the sweetheart deal. And so I never testified. And then when it came time to testify in this trial, I actually was in ICU and chemotherapy. And a lot of people say, she didn't even get to testify. And I'm like, because I was incapacitated. But my sister did testify, and my mother. And our stories have never changed. They're very credible.
I did not realize
that. I just want my
that.
files.
Of course you do. And I didn't realize about your health journey, too. You've been through a tremendous amount. You've also talked about a night in 1995 when you were at Jeffrey Epstein's office, and Donald Trump came by and made a lewd comment, and then you overheard Epstein say to him, she's not for you. And we just told this story because you've told it publicly before.
Right.
And in response to that, and I want to ask you about that, but I just wanted to note that in response to that, a White House spokesperson responded saying, this is recycled old fake news of the highest order that was already peddled more than 6 years, concocted by Democrats and the liberal media, just like they did with the Russia Russiagate scandal, which was just proven today. The president was never in his office. The fact is that the president kicked him out of his club for being a creep. There is a lot packed in there, similar themes we've seen in other statements, I will say, but it's about you. What is your...
So, first of all, that's so insulting and disingenuous, because I reported this in 1996. And I have to say, like, Donald Trump was a Democrat when I reported him. So him saying that this was a Republican thing, this is not a partisan thing. This is pedophilia. Anyone can be a pedophile. It's literally, unfortunately, it just happens to be a lot of Republicans. And that's a fact. And those same Republicans want to entertain Ghislaine Maxwell, like Tim Burchett wants to entertain her and flash her around and act like we victims should not be heard from. He didn't want to speak to me. He wanted to speak to Ghislaine and give her a voice in an audience. And my little sister is one of her victims, and so am I. So this is so damaging. And yes, I'm fighting 2 cancers, so I would like to be able to retire and have my FBI reports so that I can help bring accountability to everyone. It's not just me. I have the weight of all the young women on my shoulders right now.
You certainly do, and I am, again, grateful for you being here. We have to sneak in a very quick break. Me is Maria Farmer and her lawyer, Jennifer Freeman. Maria was one of the first women to accuse convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein and his accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, of sexual assault, and she has described an alleged encounter with Donald Trump back in 1995 as unsettling. Thanks again for being here with all of us. Before the break, we were just talking about that meeting, and you responded to a White House comment on it. But I wanted to ask you more personally. I mean, you described that meeting. You heard Donald Trump, or you heard Jeffrey Epstein say to Donald Trump, "She's not for you." What was your reaction to that? What was going on in your head at the time about that? What did you think that meant?
Right. Well, I already felt kind of intimidated because it was in a dark office and I was alone with my new boss, to be, and this man that's a powerful businessman. And so I felt intimidated, but that's not why I reported him. I reported him because when Epstein came out of the office, I was making a face at him because I felt threatened. And so I went, and he kind of laughed and backed off. And as that was happening, Epstein walked out and said, "Oh, no, she's not here for you." And he emphasized, "She's not here for you." And he said, "Come with me." And he escorted him into another office. And I was like, who's in there? And when he said, "Oh, I thought she was 16, I thought, is there a 16-year-old in there? Right? So what people need to understand is I'm not some crazy person who just reports people if they look at my legs or I'm in an office with them. But when someone is hanging out with a convicted or a pedophile, and I discover that pedophile has stolen my little sister, and then there's a powerful businessman that's making comments about me being my sister's age, then I think that the FBI needs to take a good look at it. And so that's why I asked that they do that. And as far as like the Republicans have really, really been kind of tormenting the victims. And so that's a separate topic.
I want to ask you about that too. And the part that just kept sticking with me is "she's not for you." I just don't know what that meant. None of us know what that meant, but it is hard to get it out of your head. Let me ask you, Ghislaine Maxwell, and I want to ask you too about this, Jennifer, and thank you so much for being here with us. Todd Blanche, who is now the Deputy Attorney General, is meeting with Maxwell in jail today. And as you've referenced a couple of times here, so I just want to ask you more about it. She's been a little, and I started talking about this, lionized almost, like lifted up by some who are suggesting she could be a victim too, what is your reaction to that? What has been your reaction to that? Maria, let me ask you that, and then I wanted to ask you, Jennifer, just what your thoughts are on that meeting.
Right, so I've never met a more predatory, terrifying human being in my entire life, and neither had Virginia Giuffre, and neither has Annie, or Anushka, or many girls like Shantae Davies. There's hundreds of us that were preyed upon by Ghislaine Maxwell. She's a very dangerous person, and she threatened my life on many occasions. I've had to move and be in hiding because of this predatory child predator and just victim predator. So it's completely unacceptable for anyone to call her a victim. The woman is not a victim, she's a victimizer.
Let me ask you, that is an accurate and good way of putting Let me ask you, Jennifer, I mean, you've obviously been standing side by side here with Maria, but you are also a lawyer. And I want to know your thoughts about seeing Trump's former personal lawyer, who's now the Deputy Attorney General, go spend the day privately with Ghislaine Maxwell. He's going back tomorrow. What do you think about that?
This is deeply, deeply disturbing. Ghislaine Maxwell is not a reliable witness. To think that someone who is facing what she's facing the rest of her 20-year sentence and now might have an opportunity to change that dramatically by saying whatever she wants to say or needs to say to those in charge and in charge of her fate, it makes no sense, and she's not reliable. I find it also very disturbing to equate her with the victim. We've been dealing with the Epstein victims for many years, Maria and many others, and they're the people that should be focused on here. And there's absolutely no attention to the victims. For example, there was the issuance of this memorandum 2 weeks ago. That was issued without talking to a single victim.
Are you referring to the request for the grand jury files? That or a different request?
No, sorry, I'll make that. Yeah, no, the FBI and DOJ memorandum that says we will not release any files.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing to see here. We're not going to charge anyone. This is over. And they made this conclusion, reached this conclusion without even talking to a single victim.
Which is completely outrageous. Let me ask you on that front. I mean, because there's also been this call to release the files from the grand jury, which are very narrow, and you can describe it further. But one of the steps they're supposed to take is reach out as a part of the victim notices process. Have they done that at all? Have you heard from them, Jennifer?
Not a peep, nothing. So they've not done their job in really truly trying to get those records. But this is really, those records are, even if they got them, are a spit in the ocean. They have 300 gigabytes of data and physical evidence sitting in their offices. The grand jury materials could be somewhat interesting, but that's not the guts of it.
No, certainly not. Let me ask you, Maria, there's been some I don't know if it's progress, some push to subpoena the Epstein files, to learn more, that's moved through the House Oversight Committee yesterday. Do you see that as progress? Right. And if Congress asked you to testify publicly or behind closed doors, is that something you'd be willing to do?
David Boies had promised I would be able to testify, and it didn't happen, and now it looks like they're wanting Ghislaine to testify. It's my turn. Yes.
So you would be willing. Well, that's a significant thing, and
yes, absolutely. I'm waiting.
I hope somebody out there is watching and asks you. Let me ask you both, Jennifer. Let me start with you. If you're able to gain access to the Epstein files, you may, I guess, if Congress has them and if they've contacted you. First of all, let me ask: has Congress contacted you about sharing anything from what they've subpoenaed?
No, they have not.
Okay, I hope they do. Let me ask you then, if you were to gain access, I hope so too. Somebody watching better be contacting you. Let me ask you, if you were to gain access, and I certainly hope you do, if they follow through with this, and I think they will, what are you going to look for first?
Well, first we're going to look for Maria's records, which we've been asking for years.
Yes.
And in response, we got, for example, a recent memo that's from the government that says, we'll be back to you by November 2027. That is completely unacceptable. Jen, the reality of this is that this is one of the largest law enforcement failures in U.S. history. Maria went to the FBI, gave them all the information they needed, talked about child sex abuse, trafficking, child porn, gave them the information. If they had done their job, nearly 25 years of sex abuse and other crimes could have been avoided. And this is truly tragic
29.
and unacceptable that they failed to do their job.
You have both been so generous with your time. I just want to ask Maria, before you go, you've been so courageous to speak out publicly. And if you could speak right now to any of the other victims who say they have been assaulted by Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell, what would you say to them? Because I know a lot of people are struggling right now.
Right. Well, there's a few of them I'm going to be reaching out to, and I want them to know that I love them. I'm so proud of people like Jennifer Rose and Shantae Davies and Marika, just on Anushka, there's the most beautiful young girls that were harmed. And I'm much older. I'm the den mother, and I'm mad. I'm the angry, bear. And I want those girls protected.
I'm sure they're grateful to have a den mother like you out there speaking so
you.
bravely on their behalf.
The old one.
Maria Farmer, Jennifer Freeman, thank you both so much for being out.